Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin, or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there's so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you want to know the Bible better, and you're looking for any resource to help. Then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible. We're sisters. I'm Veronica.
I'm Erika.
And we love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. So, Erika, in real time,
Yes.
this is actually after the holidays
Yes.
when we're recording today. Did you have a good holiday season, Air?
Yeah. It was very full,
Good.
but it was good.
It was good. And this is actually going out on February 3rd.
Oh, so
I
a
know.
month.
Isn't it nice to be this far ahead?
It is nice. It feels.
I shouldn't tell you, though, because then it makes you go, we got time.
Yeah,
It's like,
I
no.
can slow down.
Yes. But we are going to, we'll see how today goes. It might be chapters 4 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of depends on our talking. But we're getting into Deborah, which, because if you look at my Bible, that's the title.
Oh, interesting.
I know. So that's why
Oh.
I asked you, is Deborah the judge? And you're not going to answer that right now. We'll answer that at the end. But start us off with who are our key players in this story here.
Well, obviously, Deborah, as you
Right.
mentioned, but actually, we start with all of Israel
Oh,
again.
okay.
And we're beginning to see more cracks in the foundation. We just, with chapter 3, had our first minor judge.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're taking a bigger step down.
Right.
With this next story. And Judges 4 and 5, Veronica, go together like Exodus 14 and 15. So one gives the narrative story, and then the second chapter is like the poetic license looking back. And so it invites you, the reader, to celebrate with what God has done, but it also fills in some details. They're like, oh, I didn't realize that's how that worked. So Judges 4 and 5 go together. Whether or not we hit Judges 4 and 5 today, we'll have to see with time. But this time in Judges 4, the enemy is actually in Canaan itself. Hatzor is up in the north in the Galilee area, and we quickly move from the king Jabin to his main general Sisera, because Sisera is the one we're dealing with. So it's kind of like in Star Wars, Darth Vader and the Emperor.
Oh, okay.
The Emperor's in the background in the beginning. You really don't have much to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that Sisera would be Darth Vader. He's the one, the general we're dealing with.
He's the face.
He's the face, yes. All right. Israel does evil. Dun, da, da, da. And by this point, we're not surprised, but we are a little sad. And so God sells Israel, it says, into the hands of the Canaanite. And it lasts 20 years. So like a whole generation technically goes by. And the Canaanites are able to oppress Israel because they have the advanced technology. 900 iron chariots. When you study history, one thing you start to learn about is the Bronze Age.
Yep.
And so this is coming out of that where you start to get iron, which is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel is still new in the land, settling. They don't have iron yet, but the Canaanites have been there for a while. They have iron and they have chariots. It's a cultural shift that's beginning to happening. They were the established, more powerful, richer culture, so they had access to military technology that they used on Israel. Now, chariots are not like modern tanks. I don't know what I thought a chariot did, but I was surprised to read this. Chariots were used to pursue and slaughter the fleeing enemy. So it wasn't like you would bring out your chariots when you've got lines meeting. It was, we've already started pushing you back. You're running. I get in my chariot and I'm able to go faster. And while you're running, I can you have two usually are in a chariot, one driving and one shooting. And I can just boom, 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 shoot you.
Well, and
in
I
the
can
back.
outrun you
Yes.
and go long.
Yes. Faster,
Endurance.
farther.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because you're on legs and I'm on a horse. Is
Right.
that what
A horse
pulling
would
is?
be pulling a chariot. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it would be terrifying. Like they are
Yes.
wiping out The Canaanites were able to like wipe out an army.
Right. Quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah. So Israel obviously is going, oh, we can't do this. So they cry out to God and he responds pretty quickly compared to what we'll see later in some stories. And this is when we're...
so wait a second. So that's something to pay attention to.
Yes.
The length of time between they cry out and God responds, or how long God allows them into captivity.
All of the above plays a part. Sometimes, though, the 20 years I feel like is long. I'm trying to think of the other years. But like God answers pretty quickly by sending someone.
Okay.
In other places, he answers but doesn't send anyone.
Oh, okay. There's so much in this book that I'm learning to look.
There are. Yeah, details matter. God is into the details. So good question. But this is when we're introduced to Deborah. Mm-hmm. And she's a prophetess. She then calls on Barak. And she says, okay, God has chosen you, Barak, to lead the army and deliver Israel. Barak is a very weak and reluctant hero. In the beginning, twice as they're talking, Deborah has to command him and reassure him, God will use you, go forth and deliver your people. Finally, Barak's like, I hear you, I get you, Deborah, but I'm just not sure. I want you to come with me. I'll go. I'll do what you want, Deborah, but I want you to join with me. Barak, this is not the faith of Othniel. Or Ehud. This is a coward. And Deborah, he wants Deborah as like a security blanket type of thing. It's almost like he's kind of trying just a little bit to manipulate God. I'll obey you, God, but I need proof you're really going to stick with me and not just leave me high and dry. So Deborah, come with me. She's like, fine, I'll go with you, Barak. But here's the deal. Because you need a woman to accompany you into battle, you will lose the glory to a woman. A woman is going to kill Sisera, not you. And at this point, Barak's fine. I don't care. Just come with me.
It kind of feels like a good luck charm.
Yes.
I'm willing to go, but it feels like I need my little good luck charm.
So a little behind the scenes. I said good luck charm first. And I was talking to my husband about that. And he's like, he goes, I don't think that's giving Barak enough credit. I think a security blanket's better. And I'm like, what's the difference? And his point was, a good luck charm feels more like spiritual. Right. Whereas a security blanket is more just fear-based.
Okay. Either way. I need something with me.
Right. So that's so funny. I'll have to tell him. Bonnie said good luck charm too.
All right, so we'll let the listeners.
You decide. Was she a security blanket or a good luck charm?
Yes,
you can figure it out.
Put a poll up on Instagram.
Yes, I would be curious to know what people think.
Yeah.
All right, so finally we get to. Oh wait, first we think Deborah is going to be the one to kill Sisera. Makes the most sense. She's
because
the only,
she said a woman is going to be,
and we're like, oh yeah, it's obviously her.
Right.
But then, Veronica, we get this interesting gun on the wall moment. And would you care to explain what is a gun on the wall?
We actually introduced that in Genesis. And essentially, it's a famous saying out there. Antov Chekhov, I think, is who said it.
Sounds right.
But if a gun is going off in Act 3, Scene 3, you need to have that gun on the wall in Act 1, Scene 1. And if you have a gun on the wall in Act 1, Scene 1, you need it to go off in Act 3, Scene 3. So basically, you're setting the stage. Important elements are being introduced, laying a foundation because you need to look for it later in the story. Something is going to happen with whatever element just got introduced.
Very good.
Thanks.
So our gun on the wall is Heber the Kenite.
Okay.
I think is what
It's a person.
It's a person. And we're, okay, who is this person? Why is he being introduced? We don't know. But we're going to keep him in the back of our minds because obviously the narrator has a reason. Then we get this really quick overview of the battle. I mean, it's done within a matter of seconds in the narration. Mount Tabor, it's interesting if you ever get to Israel, Mount Tabor is a dome-shaped hill. It really stands out because most mountains, when you think of them, are like craggy, rough. They go up to a point.
In Israel or just in general?
It's in general, I think.
Okay.
When you think mountain, don't you think more
I do.
Pointed, craggy?
Yes. But I've never been to Israel to know if they look the same.
Yeah, I guess I would still. I don't really feel like Israel has real mountains, to to me, they're not real. But Mount Tabor to me is more like a dome-shaped hill. Like its top is like a dome.
Okay.
So it definitely stands out.
Okay.
And so you can picture like this dome, Barak and his army at the top, the Sisera and the chariots at the bottom, and they come and they clash and they meet. And Barak has the victory. It's amazing. We don't know how, but somehow God gives Israel the victory. And Sisera, though, escapes. And here's where the narrator begins to slow way down, because if we just had this massive battle in seconds, now we're going to follow Sisera running for miles. And Barak is now, he's like in the heat of battle. The blood, everything's rushing through him. He's this man of courage and strength, and he's going to get Sisera. But we know what Deborah has already said. The honor and glory will go to a woman. So we're curious, how is this going to work? Who's going to kill Sisera? And is Barak running with all his might for nothing? Now...
So wait, you're kind of implying then he should have just stood there and waited.
No, probably not waited, but I don't know if... maybe go after him, but you could probably not be like... I mean, the picture you get is like, he's like running hard. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. I think...
Running towards his victory.
Running towards his
victory.
victory.
My enemy.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what we're supposed to picture is Barak is pushing so hard, like maybe I can undo
Okay.
what Deborah said.
Okay.
And if I catch him quick enough, I'll kill him before a woman can.
Okay.
And now our gun finally comes off the wall. Heber the Kenite, we find out, is a friend of Jabin, Sisera's king.
Okay.
So we're wondering, is this gun going to be pointed towards Israel or towards Sisera? Who's going to get shot by our gun on the wall?
He kind of comes out of the tent and sees both of them. In a way, it's like he can go, I can take you out or I can take you out.
Right. Well, kind of.
Okay.
Sisera, it's more just an analogy, I guess I was using.
Oh, okay.
We think, now we find out, here's why Heber the Kenite's mentioned. He's friends with Sisera.
Okay.
So Sisera, we think, has found a safe place to hide. And sure enough, the wife of Heber comes out, Jael, and she's like, come into my tent and rest. And she immediately begins to mother this guy. Like, you must be so tired. You've run such a hard way. Come on into my tent and just sleep. And he's like, I'm really thirsty. Obviously, he's been running and battling. So she, instead of water, though, she gives him milk, maybe to help him put to sleep, maybe just to kind of lull him into a sense of security. And he's like, oh, before I fall asleep, if anyone asks, tell them no one's in your tent. Well, first of all, this is a woman's tent. Like, there should not be a man in her tent.
And it's not her husband.
Second, he's kind of speaking ironically because in a little bit, no one living will be in her tent because he'll be dead.
Oh.
And so she will be honest when she's like, yeah, no living person will be in my tent. And then we get this we're told exactly how he dies. And there's like, he probably never even woke up. In all honesty, he fell asleep and just never woke up. And finally, so we're in the tent. Sisera's dead. And then outside we hear this commotion. Barak has finally caught up with his enemy. Is Sisera here? I need to get him. He's out of breath. And Jael's like, got you covered. She opens the tent and there's this dead man in her tent.
Nailed to the floor.
And Barak can only stand and stare. He has lost his honor to a woman, just like Deborah said. And that's what you get for trying to manipulate the Lord and needing either your good luck charm or your security blanket, Barak. Take your pick. So do we want to answer the question about who's the judge or keep going?
You tell me in your story.
Because I was going to talk about Jael. So I'll probably go to Jael.
Okay.
Because the woman who killed Sisera, she's very ambiguous in the story. Because Veronica, on the one hand, she killed the enemy of Israel. That's a good thing.
And she's not an Israelite.
Okay. So we're not really sure, how's her husband going to respond? Like, is he going to be glad for what she did? Didn't
she kill her husband's friend?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is he going to be like, great, now our whole family's in danger?
Right.
Like, what's he thinking? But again, she did the right thing. She killed this man, but she invited a man who wasn't her husband into her tent, and she offered him hospitality in order to deceive him to kill him. So we don't exactly have...
So we're not putting Jael up as a hero of the story.
Right.
Because there's
ambiguity here. Again, like with Ehud, there's deception used for the ending is right.
Right.
But is that
the bad guy needed to die?
Right. But was this the right way to do it?
Right.
You know, she could have had Jael captured and then let Barak kill him. Or Jael could have had Sisera captured and then let Barak kill him. So there's ambiguity. There's a bit of grayness here. Everything, one commentary said, everything she did went against the social cultural norms, a massive breach of conduct and ethics. And I appreciate so much so that the Bible acknowledges there's gray. They're definitely right and wrong. Like there are actions that are 100% wrong and nothing can make them right. And there are actions that are 100% right and nothing can make them bad. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, you do this. But there's a lot of gray in the world because we live in a broken, fallen world. And so acknowledging gray and that God uses it.
Right. Right.
He used her to do what he wanted done. And so I think ultimately she is blessed. And there's a blessing for her obedience.
But I feel like we take these stories sometime and go, look, Jael did this. She went against. And that's not the
point.
That's not the point of these stories. Just like Esther. Don't be Queen Vashti. Don't be an Esther when you could be, that kind of stuff. It's not here to say emulate these people.
No.
It's to show you that God is using them in the midst of these circumstances. Sometimes they do what's right. Sometimes they do what's wrong.
Right.
But the good news is God is faithful to what he's done.
Yes. Amen. Okay. So... in the end of the story, after it's all said and done, the narrator reminds us, regardless of how we view her, God subdued the enemy of Israel. The reader learns and is reminded this isn't about Deborah or Barak and Sisera, or even Sisera and Jael. Ultimately, this is a story about God and his people and how God will fight and be faithful for his people. And the enemy right now is the Canaanites. The conclusion reminds the reader that the conflict is not between the patriarchy and egalitarianism, or between men and women, or between Israelites and the rulers of other nations. This is a conflict between the divine king, the kingdom of light, and the forces of the kingdom of darkness. Ultimately, this is between God and his enemies. And when you fight against God, you will lose. And he will use anyone and anything to defeat you. He's God. But now we're going to answer that question, who's the judge in the story?
Well, because truthfully, if you look at my Bible, all my headlines gives you the name of the judge. Othniel, Ehud, and then it has Deborah.
Right. And I think a lot of people, because it says in the beginning, Deborah's sitting under a tree judging Israel. But once we put the story back in its context, and what are we supposed to be seeing from this story, Veronica, is Israel going down this spiral, and each judge takes us a step downward. Well, first of all, nothing negative is said against Deborah. So that completely removes our spiral. Secondly, who's the one that was chosen to deliver Israel? Deborah didn't. She set up the man who was supposed to. Barak is ultimately the one who's supposed to deliver Israel. He's the one God has chosen. And the only reason, so Barak was supposed to lead the army. Deborah wasn't even supposed to be at the battle. And Barak was supposed to be the one to kill Sisera. He lost his honor and in some respects his calling because he refused to trust God, and he needed Deborah with him. And so because of that, he who is the judge gets completely upstaged by women. They weren't supposed to be a part of the story. Deborah, briefly, Jael, not at all. And if Barak had been obedient and had faith and said, okay, God, I'm terrified, but you called me to do this, I'm going to do it, then we wouldn't even read much about Deborah or Jael. at all. And so I think Barak is actually the judge. But we get confused because we don't realize this is the spiral that's happening. And Barak has taken that massive step down.
Well, we lost that pattern. If we haven't learned to read Judges with that pattern that you set up 2 weeks ago of the judge comes and each judge, I think it was each story of the judge gets a little bit longer and each judge in a way loses their oomph.
Yes.
In what they do because of their doubt, because of their disobedience, wavering. So you have to have it be Barak to fit with that of, who was the first judge? Othniel? Othniel came out so strong, so great. Ehud used a little deception. Shamgar, he was our break in the story. Because if you want to go to Samson where you go, oh my word, he doesn't do anything right, you need to keep that pattern of Othniel's amazing. Samson, did he do anything right? Barak fits in there better than Deborah does.
Yes. And I think the only reason we wonder if it's Deborah is because we miss that spiral. Yeah. And so we don't realize, he's been completely upstaged.
Right.
Because he needed his security blanket.
Right. So then anybody who emailed me or responded to any of our questions about name a judge and you said Deborah, we're not judging you.
Because we had this discussion before the podcast. Who's the judge here?
Right. So it was us working it out beforehand to go, here's why. Because what did you say about commentators?
Some commentators will say, is it Deborah and Barak together? Is it Barak? Even the commentators, not all of them think it's Barak.
Okay.
And so if you say Deborah, that totally makes sense based on usually how we read it. I think once we read it the way the narrator intended us to, then we go, Barak makes the most sense. But
so we won't judge you if you thought Deborah was a judge, because I did.
No.
All right. Do you want to get into chapter 5 today?
I think we can do chapter 5.
Okay.
All right. So, because we're not going to hit a ton. We're not going to go step by step. It's the song of Deborah and Barak, but most think it was probably written by Deborah once the victory occurred. And second of all, this is really old Hebrew. It would sound like Shakespearean English type if you were to read it in the Hebrew, which makes sense because if it's a song, when we pass down a song, we don't change the words and modernize them usually. Sometimes we do. But for the most part, we keep the song words the same. So that to me makes a lot of sense. It's Exodus 15 and Judges 5. Both, I think, are the oldest Hebrew in the Bible. Now, this song was partly written to entertain, so the images are big and bold, but it's also written to celebrate God and his victory. And you see the song starts out in the east or the southeast with God down here with Sinai, and he's moving north. And as he moves, nature erupts with explosive force. Mountains are quaking. The earth is trembling. The sky eventually unleashes a powerful rainstorm. This is a massive god that's on the move. Baal is associated more in the north of Israel. And so you get this almost like the meeting of two titans are coming together and who's going to win. And obviously, God has absolutely no problem. And the foreign kings can only watch in silence and horror as the God of Israel takes the victory. But we also see, like at this point, Israel is weak, vulnerable, afraid to travel, and as their God is moving, and the Canaanites who think their God is the best, they're swaggering, they're riding donkeys, they're doing great, but the tables will turn swiftly. And then we get to see a bit more fracturing in the nation as it goes through tribes and says, well, this tribe helped, but this tribe chose not to help. We're starting to see that unity is disappearing. But then we get insight for how God actually fought for Israel. So they meet in the Jezreel Valley. It's kind of in the middle. And there's this little Kishon River in the Jezreel Valley. And one army was on each side. And normally it's this tiny little river, shouldn't have caused an issue. But this powerful, epic rainstorm comes and just floods the river. And it turns that empty area into a swamp. And so how easily, Veronica, do you think chariots move in a swamp?
I'm just picturing them all stuck in the mud.
Right, pretty much. And so Israel now is able to run and just kill all the drivers, all the soldiers. Like they are just like boom, boom, boom.
You've kind of evened the playing field.
Yes.
We're back to you're on your legs, I'm on mine.
And I'm used to fighting on my legs.
Yeah. Your advantage is gone.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up with the horses just running mad, riderless. There's nobody in control of the Canaanites' riders because they've all been, or the Canaanites' horses because their riders have all been killed. So they're just running over the plain free as the Canaanites are all dead on the field. And then we get a very slow motion death scene again. I mean, it kind of cracks me up the way the author of Judges just really enjoys this moment in Judges chapter 5. But Sisera's the big baddie, and so there's no cheers for him. Don't cry. Don't weep.
Mm-hmm.
What we find out is he deserved this because the very next scene we go to quickly is his mother. Now, originally, Veronica, when you read about his mother waiting for him to come home, you're like, oh, that's heartbreaking.
Right.
Like, why would I want to see his mother, the sweet...
Don't make the bad guy seem human.
Right, exactly. Exactly. You can originally picture this sweet little gray-haired woman. She just made cookies to celebrate her son's victory, and she's at the window waiting. And we're like, oh, that's horrible. But then we get to listen into what the mother is saying to herself. And we realize this woman does not deserve our pity. She basically is fantasizing about her son and his soldiers raping the Israelite women. And so much so that she can't even call them women. In the Hebrew, it's actually a womb or two for each man. Like in her eyes, these Israelite women are just toys to be used and abused. There's nothing human about them. Kill the men, destroy the babies, and rape the women. And then when you're done, just kill them too, because we don't need any of them. Like that's what this mother's picturing in her head. So we're left with this like, oh, this is the way Canaanites view other people. This is horrifying. And our pity for this woman dries up. And we also begin to go, well, if that's how Sisera handled things when he won, should the tables have been turned, he easily could have raped Jael instead of being killed by her. So we're kind of rethinking some of Judges chapter 4, even with Jael going, well, it is a good thing this man is dead. There's no pity here. But after the rain, the sun comes out, Israel rises in peace and blessing. It's a new day, and Israel has peace for 40 years. And that's Judges 4 and 5. Now, when I was writing this lesson, Veronica, the psalm kept running through my head, Psalm 20, verse 7. And it says, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. And I think if I could rewrite that psalm today, I would put it this way, like some trust in their nuclear weapons, others trust in their military, their soldiers, but we will trust in the Lord. And I think that's something you see throughout history. You can be the most advanced, technologically advanced society, but when God decides to fight against you, all that technology is for naught. He can open up the heavens and stop your tanks. He can open up the skies and stop your missiles. He can open up the earth and swallow your soldiers. He can confuse the mind of your generals, cause your leaders to mistrust and fight each other. It doesn't matter what you have when God battles against you. When God says this empire, this country's done, it's done. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. At the same time, when God fights for you and says this nation isn't done, it doesn't matter what comes against you. You may be small and weak, but you will stand. Well,
you just think of just the atrocities that have happened in Israel.
Yes.
Over a year ago with October 7th, the hostages still in captivity at the time of this recording, of just God hasn't forgotten. God allowed that horrible acts to happen, but there will come a day when it won't happen again, and Israel will be able to fight and be victorious on all fronts. And you just go, what hope they must have as a nation. And what that just, the pictures, I mean, it's just amazing to me when we studied Micah, when we studied Habakkuk, this warrior God that I don't feel like we see enough in our songs, in our Bible studies of we like the lover God, the prince coming bounding over the hill, and those are great. But what I really want at the end of the day, I want that warrior who can defend me and protect me against everything.
And put things right.
Yeah.
And deals with evil and sin.
Yeah. And so you get that picture again. I think even just giving that to our boys of this is the God you are coming underneath his authority. Isn't it easier? I mean, I just look at my boys, your boys more than mine right now, but just the battles they play.
Right.
And how that's in them of just, here's your warrior king. What if we taught that to our Sunday schools?
Yeah.
Our kids' stories of good does win in the end. We are waiting for the perfect king to take the throne. But meanwhile, we've got a king who's going to battle for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just like those. I like that image.
I do too.
So.
We miss it so much because I don't understand till it's explained to me.
Right.
Like the earth reacts. This is how powerful God is. The earth reacts when he comes down to fight. Like, oh.
Yeah.
You get that shaking.
I know. Just everything reacting, the violent storms.
Yes.
So, anyways, that's what we like, is we like those powerful images. We like the hope that you, even in the midst of this downward flushing cycle of judges, there is reminders of God is in control. Whether Israel saw it or not, whether Israel felt it or not, whether we see it, we're here to tell you it's in there. So you can have hope. You can go to bed and sleep in peace, knowing God is taking care of that. But
Amen.
Don't forget, we are going to put up that quiz. That poll on social media. Was Deborah a security blanket
or a good luck charm? And is there a difference?
Yeah.
I would love to know.
Help us figure that out. Is there a difference? Let us, so we can go back to Brian Van and go,
right.
Here's what our listeners have said. Right. But so check us out on Instagram, on Facebook, the graphics I make on Pinterest. As always, come check out our website, sign up for our newsletter. We're there to help you, and we want to interact with you.
And come back to find out, how far down will Israel go?
Yeah, are we done with Barak now?
Yes.
Okay. He died. We're moving on to a new judge.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.